So CNN is already humiliating themselves here. Fareed Zakaria is going to deliver a monologue for us, and he's going to tell us about the brilliance of Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. Let's watch.
Of Donald Trump's recent announcements, the one that intrigues, even excites me the most, is the establishment of Doge.
It intrigues and it excites him. He's excited about Doge. Oh boy.
Misnamed Department of Government Efficiency. Misnamed because it is really a non-governmental advisory body that will work with the White House, not any kind of department inside government.
Wait, I love how he acknowledges that reality, but he's still intrigued and excited by it. Look, best case scenario, this is Trump telling those guys to piss off. This is Trump like, yeah, thanks for your help. Here, go play in the corner, Vivek and Elon. Hopefully that's what Trump is doing. I hope he doesn't take their advice, because their advice is going to be horrific.
Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, who will be in charge of Doge, are both brilliant, and the federal government has clearly become too expansive and its writ too cumbersome. There are over 180,000 pages of federal regulations. Surely it's worth taking a close look at them and retiring many. Observers have pointed out that the duo's efforts...
So this is just CNN just doing Republican ideology, right? That's just what this is. Oh, the government's really big and there's all these regulations. Surely you could throw a bunch of them out. But it shows how, just like with MSNBC, all of these major media networks are pre-capitulating, already genuflecting at the altar of Trump and Trumpism. So, hey, maybe they have some points. It was right before the election, he was talking about Arnold Palmer's cock and talking about deploying the military against the enemy within, which are Democrats. And now it's like, let's look at the intellectual framework and maybe there's points of agreement. Oh my God.
Much harder to achieve than they imagine. Washington may be quite inefficient, but most of what it does is write checks with great efficiency. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, unemployment insurance, and other mandatory programs make up around 60% of the federal budget.
Yeah, and that's what they want to cut, Fareed. So maybe they're not brilliant. Maybe you shouldn't be excited by Doge, because when you go through whatever their report is that they eventually put out, it's going to be, it'll be a mess. Every single program that helps regular people, they'll have on the chopping block. And they might touch Pentagon spending a little bit, but my guess is that's where most of the fat is, and they're not going to touch the majority of that.
Donald Trump has often said he would protect most of the spending. Next is the Department of Defense at over $800 billion, which has generally been considered untouchable for political reasons, though it is probably the department that most desperately needs to be streamlined.
And that's what they won't do. The Pentagon failed their 7th audit in a row. The last audit, they couldn't account for 61% of their money. But I guarantee you, the military budget went up under Trump every year he was president, and I bet you the same thing happens now. So that means what? If you're going to increase military spending, so no cuts there, where are you going to cut? You're going to cut stuff like WIC. You're going to cut stuff like SNAP, food stamps. You're going to cut programs that help regular working people.
America has 4 different air forces. The Air Force itself, the Army's Air Force, the Navy's Air Force, and that of the Marines. After the Pentagon comes interest on the debt, also untouchable, which is almost as large as the Pentagon's budget. What is now left is about 15% of the federal budget, which includes certain veterans benefits, agricultural subsidies, spending on roads and highways, etc. To achieve the $2 trillion spending cuts that Musk has often talked about, he would need to eliminate all of this spending and all of the Pentagon spending, and then he'd still have work to do. But I do support the impulse to reform, and not just because I think it will force greater scrutiny and efficiency to government, which needs it.
What an amazing thing to say. He'd have to cut like everything. But look, I kind of agree in principle. These people are, hopeless and useless. Hopeless and useless. As if every Republican candidate, and even many Democrats over the years, haven't said, we're going to go through the budget line by line and see where we can reduce. And like, would you look at that? They come back and basically all of it goes up every year. Because with a lot of these cuts, what is it when you do massive government cuts? What's that called? It's called austerity. Europe tried this in the 2010s, and it was a disastrous result. Look, Vivek and Elon, they are devotees of like Ayn Rand-style libertarianism. They like, for example, Javier Milei is like their favorite, world leader right now. And go look at the poverty rate in Argentina, 52%. Why? Because it turns out a lot of these government programs that he's slashing relentlessly actually are very helpful and very useful and are good for regular people. But that's the thing. They don't care about working people. They're plutocrats. They're oligarchs. They want to plunder the system, give themselves more money, give themselves more power, take more subsidies, get more tax cuts, and screw over everybody else. Set up little libertarian dictatorship fiefdoms where they're at the top.
The duo will also force the country, and especially the Republican Party, to confront a reality that it has danced around for decades. The modern Republican Party was forged in opposition to Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal.
And that's why they're wrong about everything. Because FDR is the best president we've ever had, tied with, you could say, Lincoln and Washington. He's the best. And the whole modern Republican Party, the whole point was, we're against the guy who did everything right.
Ever since the 1930s, the party's strongest ideologues have promised to repeal the New Deal and dismantle the architecture of the federal government that was largely constructed by FDR. But they never did. The first Republican president to occupy the White House after FDR and Truman was Dwight Eisenhower, who largely accepted Roosevelt's legacy. Next, in 1968, came Richard Nixon, who actually expanded it, establishing new agencies like the EPA and proposing a version of universal health care, believe it or not. All this infuriated conservatives who kept urging rollback. Ronald Reagan came to political prominence in a nationally televised speech he made on Barry Goldwater's behalf against a growing government and deeply skeptical of farm subsidies and programs like Medicare and Social Security, warning of socialism that would doom the American Republic to a future of tyranny and unfreedom. But of course, during his 2 terms in office, Reagan never seriously tried to repeal Social Security or Medicare. In fact, federal debt held by the public as a percentage of GDP grew under Reagan. It's worth noting that the only president to balance the budget since 1969 was Bill Clinton. Ramaswamy and Musk have both taken to posting a clip of economist Milton Friedman on their social media, in which he argues for a very limited role for the federal government. Ironically, this role would not seem to envision any support for things like EVs and civilian space programs, which have helped create the bulk of Elon Musk's fortune.
And that's how you know Elon is completely and utterly full of shit. Because I guarantee you, he still wants his subsidies. He still wants his tax cuts. He still wants control of these giant agencies and get government help in the process of it. That's what he wants. So again, that leaves what to cut? You already know. You already know. And any and all programs that help working people, that's what's on the chopping block. Period. That's what it is. You'll see. You'll see.
But what decades of public policy seem to have revealed is that Friedman's vision has little support in the U.S. We are where we are because the American public has voted for Republican levels of taxation and Democratic levels of spending, which leaves a gap that can only be filled by borrowing. There's a strong argument that the U.S. debt is on an unsustainable path, especially when you consider the rising costs that will come as more and more baby boomers retire. But slashing federal spending dramatically will almost certainly cause an economic downturn.
Yeah, no shit. So why did you call it brilliant? Why did you call it brilliant? Why did you call them brilliant? Why did you say you're excited about this?
Recall Europe's experiment with austerity in the 2010s. The central lesson of macroeconomic policy in recent decades has been that government spending now constitutes a large enough part of the economy that cutting it drastically can lead to a downward spiral of reduced consumer spending and declining confidence. Your expenditure is my income. The US federal government is smaller than much of the industrialized world in terms of spending as a percentage of GDP. It still desperately needs reform and streamlining. But conservatives have long argued that it needs to be much, much smaller. In fact, a good part of the rage that has built up among parts of the Republican base over decades has been centered on the notion that party leaders have promised repeal again and again, but never delivered. With Doge, we may finally get an effort to actually deliver on the central Republican promise of the last 70 years.
Look, if Trump has enough of a self-preservation instinct, which he might, he will take whatever report Elon and Vivek give him and he'll throw it in the trash. He'll throw it in the trash. Because if you actually implement these ideas, if you actually implement the Ayn Rand total free market approach, his approval rating will plummet to under 20%. Without a doubt. If you do massive cuts or try to get rid of Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, you are done. Those are third rails in American politics for a reason. For a reason. People love those programs. But that's the thing, a lot of these, like even the Republican voters, They say they want smaller government, but if you actually were to deliver on that, they'd be like, whoa, 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 not like this. It's like that comment that people were sharing after the election where somebody said, man, I really want to get rid of this Obamacare bullshit. I have the Affordable Care Act, and I love that, but we got to get rid of Obamacare. Bro, that's the same policy. Or that old, during the Tea Party years, remember there was a protest. Somebody had a sign that said, keep your government hands off my Medicare. Bro. Medicare is the government. Medicare is the government. So yeah, their whole, oh yeah, let's dismantle the New Deal. Let's get rid of the whatever meager social safety net we have left. Okay. Just watch what happens if you do that. Holy shit. Just watch what happens. But Trump may have the political instincts enough, because he says it all the time in the campaign, I'm not going to cut Social Security, I'm not going to cut Medicare. He says it all the time. Now, last time he proposed budgets that did try to do that, right? They didn't, but he did try to do that. So what is he going to do this time? I don't know. We'll see. But if he listens to Vivek and Elon Musk, even Trump can't push through that big of a downturn, because it will be an epic disaster. So, by the way, is there any area that's actually worth cutting? Yes, of course. The area is the military. That's it. It's the military. Everything else, there's a much better argument and reason for every other part of the federal budget. They do these, I'm sure you've seen the goofy things where it's like, the government paid $17 million for hamsters to have sex on the Love Boat. Like, you've seen these, like, headlines and shit. All these things are totally fucking misleading. It's right-wing hacks who try to portray it as, like, the government is so big and wasteful, bro. Look at what they're doing, bro. And anytime you actually try to fact-check it and look up the specifics of it, it's like, whatever thing they're portraying is ridiculous is not at all ridiculous. It's some, like, important study to figure out a new medicine for a certain kind of disease or whatever the fuck it may be, right? But, like, don't fall for the propaganda. But, man, weird segment from Fareed here, saying these guys are brilliant and saying he's excited about this. Being excited about an unfettered, laissez-faire, ultimate capitalist hellscape. I don't know. Being excited about going back to the robber baron era where there's no social safety nets. A little bit out of touch there, fella. Just a little bit. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.